Episode 17. Kate and I are back discussing Game of Thrones. We just finished Season 7, Episode 1, Dragonstone. Just a heads up in case we get any new listeners that Kate and I have both read the books, and when possible we discuss the books, and sometimes that might lead to some potential spoilers. Alright, Kate, welcome back. It's been a long year waiting for the next season of Game of Thrones to start. What do you think of that episode?
I liked it. My initial reactions, we do these podcasts very, very soon after we watch it, so there's not a whole lot of time to digest. But with that, I do remember while watching thinking that I like how this is going. And I definitely was comparing it to a couple of the last seasons where the first episode kind of got you going. You were excited to be back in the saddle, but it was a little bit slow. Or here, they opened up with Frey House and its demise, and it was pretty awesome. Yeah,
as far as opening episode goes, I thought it was pretty good. They always got to spend the first episode of the season kind of reminding us where all the pieces are and what's going on, and I thought it was pretty good. One of the better first episodes of the season, I think.
I think it was a good judgment call, too, of starting the whole episode with the Frey House and Arya there, because it kind of made me feel like I was satiated for what I needed within the first few minutes, so that if they did need to do a lot of recapping or regrouping, I was okay with that for the rest of the episode.
Right. There's usually not a momentous scene or big battle or anything in the first episode of the season. Normally we jump around from location to location, kind of like, here's what happened at the Wall and here's what happened at King's Landing or whatever, but they were moving around so much, I kind of just wrote down each scene, and I was thinking we can just pick apart the scenes quickly. Alright, so like you said, it started with Arya as Walder Frey, killing off the entire clan, destroying that house. Did you know that was Arya right away?
Yeah.
Yeah. How could you not?
Anybody who watched season 6, episode 10 knows that Walder Frey's dead because she killed him. But he was acting a little bit more, I don't want to say twitchy because that's not exactly right, but there were little nuances that were a little bit different that I think was supposed to let the audience know that it wasn't Walder Frey.
Yeah, and he looked just a little bit less evil.
Yeah. And he had more purpose to him, I think, is the biggest difference that I noticed. And it was pretty obvious to me that the wine was going to be poisoned in some way or another, but that's okay. Because how else is she supposed to do such a mass?
Right, yeah. They're showing the serving girls serving the wine and all that stuff. Whoever controls the twins, which is the Frey castle, not castle, but stronghold, whatever you call it, whoever controls the twins basically controls the route north or south.
Right.
So I don't know if that's going to come into play or who controls it now. I guess the Lannisters maybe are moving in there. It showed Arya meet up with that little band later. We can talk about that later, but that could have big ramifications up the road, or they could just ignore it.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I'll just add too is it looks like that Arya is still trying to go by some sort of code, so that only the people who participated in the Red Wedding and who were the most influential in Frey, the House of Frey, were killed, but then innocent, so Walder's wife and the serving girls were not affected. Right,
yeah. Yeah, she's like the Punisher, just going after the guilty. Alright, then the next scene, it just showed all the Whites and the White Walkers and the Giants, which was a pretty intimidating scene, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was pretty intimidating when you go back a few seasons to the battle on the Wall and the fact that there were 2 giants fighting for Mance. It was like, oh my god, they've got 2 giants. We're here. They clearly show that not only do they have tens of thousands of walkers, but there's also several giants as well, and it kind of really puts things into perspective of how bad it is.
And then Bran showed up at the Wall. I guess that was cool. I guess, do you have any thoughts on that? Not much to say there.
Well, I was kind of glad that they didn't have to take us through a whole lot of being dragged through the rest of the way north. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, all right, we're already there. And it looked like Bran had a lot more determination, purpose. He seemed less, I think, confused about his role and what he needs to do. He kind of seemed to come into his own a little bit more between last season and this season.
Yeah, I was pretty grateful for just a short and quick Bran scene as well. He might not be as confused about his role, but I'm still confused about the Three-Eyed Raven. I've read the books, I've watched the show, and I'm still not quite clear what his deal is. At the end of last season, Benjen Stark, who's a good zombie apparently, dropped him off at the Wall, and Benjen said he cannot cross the Wall because of magic. So that's why they were so close. So Bran and Mira just knocked on the door, and Ed let them in.
But do you think they just open it at the risk of them being...
Yeah, well, 2 wildlings, possibly. He asked if they were wildlings.
But after they open, I don't know. I mean, probably not a big deal.
I don't know what their security measures could be at that point.
I think maybe Ed's on a steep learning curve here.
But Dolorous Ed is the 1,000th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. That seems kind of weird to me.
Well, don't they need to have an election?
Right. I don't know if he's the official Lord Commander, but at the end of last season, not John, but after John gave him his cloak, the next person called him Lord Commander. I thought it was weird that John was 999th. I didn't pick Ed to be 1,000, but I guess that's it.
Yeah, but 1,000's only quote-unquote special because we decide that it's so.
Well, I got a feeling he's going to be the last one.
Oh, yeah, probably. But going back to a little bit of what you were saying about Bran, is this episode did talk about when we got to the Citadel about how their purpose is like the record keepers of time. And I'm wondering if there's a parallel between the Maesters at the Citadel and who Bran is now, the Three-Eyed Raven, that he's kind of the timekeeper and recorder of all things that have happened and that are relevant more from a magical perspective.
Well, in the world of Ice and Fire, I don't know what the name of their planet is, but the planet that they're on seems to have a pretty damn long history, longer than Earth's history, I believe. It seems like they talk about thousands of years of unmoving technological progress and stuff. All right, the next scene after that was in the north at Winterfell. Jon and Sansa having a meeting with all the northern houses and having a little spat between each other. Jon was wise to stick to his guns, I think, and Sansa was unwise to argue with him in front of people, but I guess they can hash it out in front of people. That's kind of the way it is there, I suppose.
Yes and no. I mean, I think how someone's a ruler is pretty consistent no matter where you are, that if you get undermined, it implies weakness. And so Sansa undermining Jon in front of everyone, I don't think is very good. But I do think that it's important that they do communicate. And so I wish she went about it a little bit differently. This is something that I had a problem with at the end of last season as well. It's unnecessary conflict. And they even talk about it. Like, we don't need to fight amongst ourselves, and yet they still do. And so it's just, I feel like after everything they've been through, it's like, it's unnecessary.
I think it's the nature of television that they have to show that they're not exactly on the same page, but they can't spend a whole bunch of time having it behind closed doors and all this stuff. I think they just got to get it out there in the open as quick as possible, even if it seems forced and awkward. Yeah, so they had House Karstark and House Umber.
I like that they had them there.
Yeah.
It shows that like the line of succession is still continuing. I don't know how much time passed in between from like the last episode and this episode, but that word got out where it's like, please send your next here. Like they were at least invited and present for this.
Right. We couldn't tell if that was the exact same meeting where they just called him King of the North and then it's like 5 minutes later, or if it was like reconvened 2 months later. They looked to be in the same clothes and everything. And it seemed like in this episode, different geography was on different time. Time had passed at different speeds from the last season finale. And not only that, but news travels awfully freaking fast in Westeros.
Right, they've got those like jetpacks. And
maybe
the Ravens have jetpacks.
Everywhere we went, they knew that the Freys were done for. They knew
Cersei
that
the Septa Baylor. And
that Cersei was in charge and that Dany was on her way.
Yeah, how did notification of Dany coming with all the, like with the Unsullied and with the Dothraki horde, like how did they have that much information and get to Westeros before they actually got
there?
And
the Martells and Highgarden, and they...
Well, was that known?
Maybe it wasn't. She listed Highgarden as an enemy, but maybe she didn't know.
Right, but she listed as
Cersei.
an enemy. Yeah, I have a feeling that Cersei doesn't know. I might have missed that in the episode, but I got the impression that she's unaware that Dorne has aligned with the Tyrells, who have aligned with Dany.
Okay, yeah. I bring up the Karstarks and the Umbers because I was complaining last season about how, or not last season, the season before, about how they were giving Stannis' storyline to Jon. Where Book 5 ends off and where the sample chapters of Book 6 are in is that the Karstarks are in Stannis' army and Stannis finds out they're going to betray him and he captures the Karstarks. So they were bad show-in book, just in different contexts. And the Umbers, people might not remember, Small John Umber, fought with the Boltons. His dad is the Great John Umber, who was in up to season 2, I think. He's the one that Greywind, Robb's dog, bit his fingers off.
Yeah.
And he was the first person to declare Robb the King of the North. But anyways, Great John Umber just disappeared from the show. He wasn't killed at the Red Wedding. He wasn't in the Red Wedding. He's just gone from the show. So I looked him up to see where he was in the books because I couldn't remember. And he's held captive by the Freys, but he's still alive in the books. Then he just completely vanishes, and then his son... I guess his son mentioned in season 6 that his dad was dead, but there was no specifics, but it was just kind of a weird, what seemed like a major northern character vanished. But yeah, so the conversation that they had at Winterfell will tie into several parts of this episode, but Jon talks about how they needed dragon glass, which was a big theme of this episode. It came up in Sam's section and for Dragonstone when Dany got there. Sam mentions that Stannis tells him that there's a bunch of dragon glass on Dragonstone. In the book, Stannis is having Dragonstone mined for dragon glass when Loras Tyrell sieges the castle and is covered in like hot oil or something, or hot tar.
Yeah, that's the last we know of Loras in the books.
So Loras's demise or non-demise is much different than it was in the show, where he was killed last episode in the fire at the church. I would say Loras is one of the characters that got really short shrift in the show compared to the books. As far as like when you watch the show, you never knew that Loras was a badass. You just thought he was kind of a rich kid or something.
Yeah.
The show, one complaint I had last season, that they do an awful lot of conveniences. So, for example, last season, there's a huge snows that basically destroy Stannis, and then Jon has the Battle of the Bastards, and it's like springtime. And then, like, the next episode, there's the huge snows again. And then, for this episode today, they go to Dragonstone. Dany arrives there, and it's just completely empty. Nobody thought it would be nice property to have a big giant castle sitting there. And not to mention, so Stannis went to the north, he left Dragonstone and he took his army, but there's more to each of these strongholds than armies. There's wives and families and things like that. Which is
alluded to with Jon saying, I'm not going to punish people with their ancestral home. You know, he's talking about all the people who still live at these places, and yet, I mean, I know we only saw Dragonstone, so maybe the lands we haven't seen yet, but yeah, there's not consistency with that, I don't think.
Oh no, it's just convenient to just have this beautiful castle completely empty sitting there that I guess the Lannisters would be the closest. They never thought like, hey, this would be nice, or you know, or the Greyjoys who love to take stuff.
What's typical is that who's ever in control, they gift or give the lands to people who've been loyal, and Dragonstone would be a huge, like, remember, like, how they gave Harrenhal to Littlefinger, and then they gave Harrenhal to, like...
Right. Yeah. Why would Littlefinger give a crap about Harrenhal if Dragonstone is sitting there? They just make an awful lot of conveniences like that. And you can see why they took out Stannis the way they did. Like, okay, well, let's just get rid of this guy so that his castle is available, and that, you know, we can have all these other things moving forward. But anyways, so it seems like Jon wants dragon glass. Sam says he's got to tell him there's dragon glass at Dragonstone, and Dany just got to Dragonstone. So I don't know what that means, but Dragonstone... Well,
they're all coming together at some point.
Right.
Like, clearly we know that Jon and Dany are going to have some conversations at some point, because there's the Great War, and she's got dragons, and that's, you know, pretty convenient given the circumstances.
Right. I just wonder if there's going to be potential conflict there. Dragonstone goes from being this completely abandoned castle that apparently nobody wants to suddenly a hot item.
Well, and there's also this Targaryen thread. I mean, they went out of their way in the show, at least last season, to tell us that, well, you and I hypothesized on this. I think it was fairly clear that Rhaegar is Jon's dad, but we know for sure that Lyanna is Jon's mom, and so I think that's going to be a tie-in, that once Bran gets to Winterfell and tells Jon, then it's kind of like, all right, well, we got this to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be interesting how they introduce that. If anyone didn't catch what we're just talking about, I think it was pretty clear in the last episode in the flashback that Jon wasn't Ned's son, he was Lyanna's son, and she says to him, if Robert finds out, Robert will kill him, which shows that it's not Robert's son. I remember some people asked me, like, oh, is that Robert's son? No. That's Rhaegar's son. So Jon is, half Targaryen.
Well, and honestly, I think HBO even put up a genealogy of this on their website and said that Rhaegar is his dad. So just in case, like, if people...
Anyone who takes the Game of Thrones serious enough to listen to this, I think will know by now.
Yeah, if that's considered a spoiler at this point, then...
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else on Winterfell we should touch?
I'm curious where they're going with Littlefinger. I mean, he's always got something planned, but it seems like Sansa's got his number, and she's at least a little bit wiser with that. And I think she's giving him the brush off on purpose because she knows it's going to annoy him and keep him more likely to be aligned with her. And
Right, she's
playing him.
I guess, yeah. Littlefinger's there for a reason. He's not just.
That's what Brienne said. I think she's his reason.
Well, I don't even just mean a reason for his motivation. I mean for the story to move forward. He's there for some reason. They could have put him anywhere in Westeros at this point. We got another little cutesy look from Tormund Giantsbane to Brienne.
God, I still love it.
Yeah, it'll run thin at some point, but it's still funny. He looks so funny.
Well, and it kind of makes sense too because the wildlings could not care less if you're male or female most of the time, unlike in the rest of Westeros.
Right, they don't judge her.
Right.
Yeah.
And so here's Brienne, who has no choice about her size, but she does have a choice of who she becomes and how good she becomes what she decides to be. And she's magnificent. And they even say, we hear that she bested the Hound in single combat. She's amazing.
That was another one of those things where I'm like, man, news sure does fly in Westeros. Like, if for Littlefinger to find out that she defeated the Hound, which
how?
Which
how
doesn't
did that get out?
right, which doesn't happen in the books, means either Podrick or Brienne was bragging about it. Most likely, that's the only way. I guess it's conceivable that Pod told someone that told someone that told someone, whatever. But those.
Well, and what doesn't really match up in the books is there's so much secrecy around who the Gravedigger is. It's not revealed yet if that's Sandor Clegane, even though that's what most fans theorize, that at least the show said was the case. But the show does its own thing because I think George R. R. Martin said that Cold Hands in the books is not Benjen Stark, and yet they did that, so there could be differences there. However, in the books, there's so much secrecy around the Hound if he's the Gravedigger, and so if it's that one non-Septon guy played by Ian McShane who died, that would be weird if he talked. So I don't know how people know that.
Right, so in the books right now, it's not shown that the Hound is still alive. They revealed that last season. But there is a scene where Brienne sees someone digging a grave, and he has the Hound's horse, and he's big, and he has a limp. So it's very heavily implied it's the Hound. Brienne and the Hound do not fight in the books. She sees him digging a grave, so it's called the Gravedigger theory or whatever. And the show gave a little nod to that today. The Hound was digging graves.
Yeah.
And I think that was their little... I guess we're just skipping to the Hound right now. Let's do that. So the Hound, he might end up with this... Is it the Brotherhood Without Banners? Is that what these guys are?
Yeah.
Okay. He might end up with this crew, but it's going to be way different because the Beric Dondarrion is dead in the books. He's gone. His power of coming back to life, he transferred to Catelyn Stark, who is Lady Stoneheart, who they completely cut from the show. So whatever happens with the Hound, it's, I think, going to be significantly different. Everything at this point is so
There's
different.
already, huge differences as well with the Brotherhood Without Banners because they're following Catelyn Stark. The Brotherhood Without Banners has kind of gone awry. They're going around killing a bunch of Freys, but they're kind of starting to go evil, where here in the show they still have some semblance of being right and just.
I hadn't really thought of it till you just said that, but that opening scene where Arya kills all the Freys, I think that Lady Stoneheart's going to kill all the Freys, so I don't think that's going to happen in the books either. We get another vision in the flames. It's only the second one we've had, I believe.
Yeah, and I couldn't help but wonder is that because of this transformation, which I just have to say I really do appreciate. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I love these books by George R. R. Martin is has such great characterization that's so multi-dimensional, and the show I think does try to do that with a lot of its characters. And here we have the Hound, who was so ruthless and killed the baker's boy without any remorse, and countless others. And here he is caring enough to dig the grave, and then even try to say words through a religion he doesn't even believe in. He's really gone through a lot, and I appreciate that in him. I mean, he's got a tough road ahead of him with a lot of the guilt that's probably coming his way. But I like it. I liked how they did it. I really appreciate how the actor portrayed it. And it's interesting because it's was this transformation necessary in order for him to be able to see something in the flames?
Right, maybe. Yeah, the Hound is having a story arc that most fans thought that Jaime would have had by now, but he hasn't quite had it. But right, yeah, what allows the Hound to be able to look into the flames and see it through Thoros of Myr? Can Thoros just have anybody see through the flames? And what he saw was pretty detailed. Zombies coming over. I didn't fully understand it. Are they coming through a hole in the wall or a mountain over the wall or something?
I think they're headed towards East Watch by the Sea.
But it made it sound like there was some kind of breach or something. But maybe I
was
wrong.
maybe wondering if it was like a landmark to indicate where they are and where they pass, that they're coming and they're close. But I wasn't entirely sure. But it was interesting because as the Hound was talking, Beric Dondarrion seemed to get more agitated and stand up as if he didn't know this information. Like there was like an update.
Right, yeah. Beric looked kind of surprised. And, we got to wonder, too, the accuracy of these things. Because, of course, Stannis saw a vision that didn't work out. We keep seeing that the red gods somehow have power. They seem to be the only gods that have power, or the priests or whatever.
It's the red
well,
god.
the red god, right,
yeah.
right. But Melisandre and Thoros of Myr, they can help people see these things in the flames, and they can bring people back to life.
Priests and priestesses.
Right. So, unless it's explained a different way, apparently one of the gods is real, which has big ramifications, or there's somehow magic connected to it or something.
Yeah, I think it's just a magic, like similar to like the Children of the Forest, that there's various beings, if you will, or ways in which magic exists in this world. And the Red God is one of them, but I agree with what was said last season, that if the Red God, kills like children and certain things, that, that's not a very good God. Like, I've never been a fan of the Red God.
Well, right, but then the question would be, is it just the priests? Like, Melisandre is maybe just kind of not that good at her job? Or...
It's all the priests and priestesses then, and there's also that whole...
Well, Thoros of Myr seems not to be too shady.
Yeah, but he's not one of the most devoted priests either. Like, he was really surprised when he brought Beric Dondarrion back, because he was basically this drunk priest who hadn't really done a very good job of what he was supposed to do. And there's the mystery around what was said to Varys when he was mutilated. And that was referenced last season too, when that priestess and Marine whispered to him, and you see him get all freaked out.
Yeah.
But there's something in the books and in the show that was whispered to him that I think is supposed to be the Red God himself, that freaks the crap out of Varys. And so there's that element there where it's like, no, I don't think all those really, really important priests and priestesses that are really into it have gotten him wrong. I think he's a pretty ruthless God. I mean, I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, and the Red God, it's certainly hard to be sympathetic toward anyone that's shown that represents the Red God, except for the fact that we know they're trying to stop the White Walkers.
Yeah, but I think my point is just because they might be supposedly a little bit less evil than the White Walkers doesn't mean that they're not evil.
Right, and we don't even know for sure that the White Walkers are evil. Like,
what do you mean?
Well,
they go around killing everybody.
I know, but like, are they motivated by evil? Like, what motivates them? Are they just a nuclear weapon that's gone wrong? And, George R. R. Martin likes to confuse the good and the evil a little bit. So, like, for a long time, we thought the Children of the Forest were good-ish, and they came off pretty good, but then we found out they created the White Walkers. And are the White Walkers just a tragedy of bad science, or what are they trying to do? Or do they even have motivation, or are they just going by instinct? They seem intelligent. But anyways, I'll concede for all intents and purposes that the White Walkers are the bad guys. I just, they might have a tragic storyline or something beyond what we know. Anything else with the Hound, Beric Dondarrion, any of that stuff?
I guess the last thing I'll say is, even though, like, the Hound's becoming more good, he's still the Hound the way he talks and acts, and
he's one of the best characters on the show. For
why
sure.
are you always so cranky? Experience, that's just so in line with who he is, and I just
and he's a cynic. I like
he's
cynical
still got
people.
his potty mouth.
Yeah. All right, should we go to King's Landing with Cersei? So yeah, on paper they're outnumbered. That's pointed out, by Jaime, who's a realist here, and Cersei is.
I think they're definitely making a point to show that, whatever good we had in Cersei came from her being a mother and the love she had for her children who are now gone, and she refuses to even talk about Tommen or even really, I think, concede to the fact that she played a role in his death. And I mean, she said that, like, he betrayed her and stuff. He was a kid, and
right.
So we've lost the compassion, whatever may have existed in Cersei. And I think they have that, right up next to Jaime, who still is Jaime and still has those good qualities that are in there, as well as being realistic. He's able to see things more clearly, and I think there's starting to be a much larger contrast between them. That the thing that brought them together and allowed them to be that unit that they were for so long has been there was a fissure that started, and it's just gotten larger and larger, and it's my hope that it'll become so large that they do break apart.
So Euron Greyjoy shows up. He built those 1,000 ships pretty quick, I guess. We don't know exactly.
Yeah, man, those
how much
Ironborn are really hardworking,
Yeah,
and apparently not very attractive according to their king.
And very industrious at times, just not most of the time.
There must not be like a single tree within hundreds of miles of the Iron Islands right now. And not only did they create all those ships, they looked really badass.
Yeah. Well, I think that ship that it showed us was his famous ship that he took around the world. I think that was his main vessel. I can't remember what it's called, but it's got some name. But when they showed Euron in the hall there meeting with them, immediately I thought of Sir Walter Raleigh in Clive Owen in the Elizabeth movie. I don't know if you remember that, but the way they had his hair and his mustache and his clothes, it just made me think of Walter Raleigh from that movie. And then that made me think of the Spanish Armada, which was defeated, and Walter Raleigh had a small role in that. But I think based on just that one scene that's where this is going, that Euron is going to defeat the Armada in some big sense. The Spanish Armada is essentially Dany's fleet. We'll see how that goes. But that's the whole thing to me. It just struck right in my mind when they saw him. Plus, he was suddenly he was charming and funny.
Well, and he's also ruthless and doesn't give a crap what anyone thinks, similar to Cersei. And they're actually quite compatible in that way. They're both kind of maniacal sociopaths who don't care about anything except for exactly what they care about. And I did kind of appreciate the way that he was hitting on Cersei, and Jaime was like, "What?" Something else is when Euron was walking away, I mentioned to you during the episode where he was talking about getting a gift for Cersei. I think he's going after the horn that he has in the books. That I think there's speculation that horn, it's definitely got magical properties in the books, but to what extent we don't know. But supposedly it might be able to control dragons. Right.
He's got this 6-foot giant horn that if you blow into it, it'll kill whoever blows it in the books, but then it'll make a dragon has to obey you or something like that. They haven't mentioned anything like that in the show, but Euron might have a weapon to control 1 or 2 or 3 dragons, which would be very devastating for Dany. But the show doesn't really... So far, it's left out a lot of those kind of items. They haven't foreshadowed that at all. There's another horn called a Horn of Jarroman or something like that can wake giants and maybe bring down the wall in the books, but they haven't mentioned anything like that in the show. And then Lightbringer, Stannis had the sword that looked like a magic sword. And Dawn is Arthur Dayne's sword that was in the show, but in the books it glows kind of like a lightsaber. So the show is much more stingy on these artifacts. So I don't know if that'll show up or not, but that would be a plausible way to even the playing field. But even without any special weapons, it's obvious that Euron is kind of the new bad guy this season. They had to replace, Ramsay Bolton and some of the other guys. So somehow he's going to be a threat, one way or another. So, and we saw in the previews a big sea battle. So that's all the big stuff that happened. I guess the only other thing was Dany arriving at Dragonstone, which...
Thank God they didn't have Tyrion just telling jokes, and we watched the whole last season getting ready for this season, and just watching so many of his scenes. Oh man,
yeah,
a lot of them are just painful and wasted airtime, I feel like.
Yeah, it's like season 5 and 6. They forgot how to write Tyrion when he's not playing the Game of Thrones and he's not scheming. They just give him dumb lines to be entertaining, and those awkward scenes where he's trying to get Missandei and Grey Worm to tell jokes. And
I feel like they were just trying to sell merchandise or something. Do you know how many shirts and glasses and stuff that say, "Oh, I drink and I know things now," from that one line? And it's just
the scene of Dany showing up Dragonstone was really, aside from the weird things we mentioned, like there being nobody there, it was a nice looking scene. It was an impressive castle. Yeah. I like when they're showing new spaces that we've seen the inside with Stannis, but not much. I like seeing the new things. It was nice that it was silent. I didn't want to hear Tyrion talk.
Well, they let the set and the location be a character in and of itself.
Right.
And I like that. And we were able to pay attention to that much better because of they removed all the pointless dialogue. And I noticed in this episode, maybe they got even a larger budget again this year or something, but they seem to be paying more attention to opening scenes of the locations. So they did it with Winterfell. They gave us an aerial view. For the first time, I was like, oh, wow, Winterfell is actually kind of big, and that Godswood is huge. And I never would have really known that if they hadn't given us that shot.
Yeah, I feel like they take feedback from previous seasons or episodes and kind of feed on that. It could be wrong, but I know people liked seeing Bear Island last season. I like to see that and like seeing some of the other castles. So hopefully we'll get a lot of that. I think, according to the previews, we might get Castle Rock this season, so hopefully they'll give us a nice visual of that. The only other scenes I had comments on this episode was Arya met a bunch of merry men, some really nice,
I forgot about that.
Nice soldiers,
who happened to be Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, I don't even know who that is. You've been trying to explain it to me. You've been singing his songs for me since it went, but I don't know who he is.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to play him and show him to you. But yeah, no, he's kind of a big deal in the music world, and he's really talented. But he did a good job singing. I think what I liked about that scene actually. And I'm curious that maybe this is why they put it in, is that clearly they're Lannisters and Arya's quote-unquote enemy, and yet they really humanize them, and especially many of the soldiers in these armies, not just the Lannisters, but all these armies of these great houses where most of them are just pretty normal trying to live their lives, and yet they're called upon by their lords. A lot of these guys just want to go home and be with their dad on a boat or be with their wife who just had a kid that, he doesn't even know if he's got a boy or a girl. And they were kind to her.
Yeah, I did like that it showed different side of things, but it also felt to me out of place and kind of forced, being that we're 7 seasons in and we're only now meeting nice people,
Well, no, I think we do. I just think what often happens when we meet nice people is they get hurt in a really bad way. It's like what the Hound says, like, how many Starks have to die before you get that you can't be kind? And then, the way that the Hound stole that money from that man and that little girl who we now see did die and had a very tragic end. Like, we do see nice people. It often goes very badly for them. We're here. I
should say nice soldiers, like the scene that we got.
Yeah.
Normally, like, you're thinking, like, are they being nice to her and then they're going to rape her and she's going to kill them all? Or, you know what I'm saying?
Well, and maybe this is based on feedback of some of the other stuff we've gotten of people in the past where maybe they're just trying to balance it out. I don't know. I mean, we have yet to see what's going to happen here with this scene, but at least right now, I guess I appreciated that, there's shades of gray with most people, including the Lannisters.
And then there was Sam. I thought it was a funny montage of him cleaning everything up and gagging.
The gagging was my favorite part every time they showed it.
But we already talked about his contributions to Dragonglass and Dragonstone, and then poor Jorah Mormont ended up there. And whatever happens with Jorah, he in the book does not have grayscale. Another character named Griffin, is that his name?
Is it John Cunnington?
Cunnington, yeah. His sigil is a griffin. John Cunnington has grayscale. And
he's known as Old Griff, I think, or something.
Yeah. Old Griff and Young Griff.
Yeah.
And their sigil is a griffin, I believe. Anyways, he has it, and they give it to Jorah instead. And I like Jorah, and I just hope that he doesn't spread grayscale throughout the realm or something terrible.
Well, he's contained at the Citadel, which I think at least might put some of those fears aside temporarily. And I couldn't tell if that was the grayscale spreading or if his hand was burnt.
I think we got to assume it was the grayscale. Maybe something else happened, but we got to assume.
But his face still looked normal from the brief glimpse we got in the dark. I'm not sure, but it looked like it could be. But he wound up there, and he's there, and they already introduced that to us in the very first episode here. So
right, he's obviously got more to contribute to the story.
Yeah,
I just hope it's not a really sad, terrible thing for him, because I think he's a sympathetic character, and like I said, this is not his case in the books, so I don't like it if the show just totally makes something really bad happen that doesn't happen in the books.
Yeah, I was wondering though, where are Gilly and young Sam staying? I thought that there was no place for them to be. Sam, I think, would have to live at the Citadel, but they don't have women, children there. They make a point of saying that in the show, so it's a little one of those some
more convenient writing for totally. All in all, though, like I said, I thought it was a pretty solid intro season. I'm really sad this season's only going to be 7 episodes, but you can see that they're moving pieces quickly, and I hope that, being that it's only 7 seasons, it doesn't feel rushed. I didn't think this episode felt rushed.
No, I was wondering about that too. I actually enjoyed this episode. I feel good about it and what they gave us, and I have a feeling that it's going to be pretty jam-packed every episode after. I mean, they've basically tried to hint at that, the various characters and the showrunners and stuff, but I think it's going to be an exciting next 6 weeks after this week, and it's kind of also cool seeing some new characters and the actors portraying them. So again, like that was Ed Sheeran, and I'm pretty sure that was, what is his name, like James Broadbent or something?
For who?
At the Citadel with Sam, who
Oh.
was doing the autopsy. I'm pretty sure he's a pretty big actor. I think he played Slughorn in the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be, and I have no idea, but I think they're not going to introduce very many more major characters. Well, I am going to make a prediction, though, that the next major character to be introduced or reintroduced is going to be Gendry Baratheon. I think he'll show up this season and be a major player. I have no idea if that's going to happen, but that's my
better, because
bold
that's like
prediction.
a total cliffhanger and like a loose thread that they completely go out of their way to introduce, with Davos setting him free.
Right, and as I mentioned last season, the stag is still in the intro, and all the Baratheons are dead. So
I don't know if you can take too much from that, but
right, but assuming that there's the Baratheons still matter at all, Gendry's got to come back and somehow be legitimized or something. That's my prediction, but we'll see.
yeah.
Cool. So I guess we'll stop there.
See you next week.
Okay, cool. Thanks.